Hi, my name is Bill Anderson. Thanks for checking out woodandshop.com. I'm an instructor at Roy Underhill's Woodwright School in Pittsboro, North Carolina, and I'm going to show you a variation on a through dovetail that's very useful for any situation where you might have a groove that you need to hide, the bottom of a box, back of a cabinet, etc., etc. And in fact, this particular tray for my toolbox is through dovetails, but it has a modified dovetail on the side here, so I can have a groove there for the bottom, but hide that groove. And you can see here in this example, here's a through dovetail, and you can see whenever you plow a groove on in the inside corners, it's going to show up in some place here, and you don't particularly want that. One way is to plug that up. Another way is to modify the dovetail to cover it up. And here's an example of the type of dovetail I'm talking about. Looks like a regular dovetail, but on the side you can see the shoulders have a different height, and the height of the shoulder hides the groove that's in the inside of this joint right there. So I have two pieces of wood, they're grooved, and we're just going to go ahead and join them together with two dovetails and make what I call a half lap dovetail. First thing I want to do is set my marking gauge to the thickness of my stock, just so that the cutter overhangs the edge of my board, and I'll check that and verify that. So it just hangs over, so I know my joint will be a little bit proud. So I'll go ahead and mark this. We'll mark this edge here. I'm just going to use the marking gauge to drag the cutter lightly across here until I can get a good score mark. And we'll do that on the sides, I should say on the edges. One there, across the back. And we'll do that on the same piece that we're going to join together. So we'll join these two corners together, so it'll be on this piece right here. I like to make these scribe lines deep enough so the chisel can drop in there later on when I do the work. So we're going to decide, one side's going to be the pin board, one side's going to be the tail board. We'll call this the pin board. I'll go ahead and put this in the vise. We can lay out some pins here. So I'm going to lay out two dovetails on this board here, just enough to make an example of this. The first tail has to include the complete groove in order for the groove not to show. So I'm going to set my dividers to about half the space between the edge of the board and the bottom of the groove there, and I'll do the same thing on this side. So I've set out two half tails, and then I'll walk through, make that just a little bit wider. So the amount that the dividers go past the other prick mark is how much space is going to be between adjacent tails. And I want it to be about 1/8 of an inch, so I'm happy with that. So I'll come back here and I'll push in there, and I'll come back from this side and I'll push in there, and I have a series of 4 marks here that I can use to lay out my tails. So I'll put the pencil right in the prick mark, bring the square up to it, draw it across, and I'll do the same thing over here on that one. Put it right in there, bring it up, draw that across. So we're going to lay out the tails here. There's just going to be 2 of them. This angle is set at some angle. I'm not sure what it is, but it happens to be an angle that I like for tails, so I've just kept it that way. So we'll set out that. Set out this one. I like to draw my lines plenty long so that I can actually see where I'm going. And we'll draw the baseline across there. So I have 2 half pins, and one full pin in between two tails. And we're going to saw those out. And for right now, I'm going to turn this board around so I can actually see the lines when I cut them. I've got a little rip saw here. To make a dovetail cut, you break the arris, which is this sharp interface between two faces here. Break the arris, push the curve square across, and saw down and slow down when you get to the base line. Break the arris, saw straight across, saw down. It's not real critical that you follow these lines. You sort of want to because they're what you laid out, but the reality is we're just making a template here, and whatever we get will give us a good joint. Of course, the only important thing is that we do in fact saw straight across. So I'll mark this other side here real quick. I can see that. So you can see we got the shoulders cut out. We stopped at the baseline. I'll go ahead and cut out the space in between. With a coping saw. Bring that down here about 2/3 of the way down. Start to make a little turn. And knock that out. These half pins are cut in a different way. What I like to do is take a wide chisel and make what's called a first class cut. We're going to drop this down right in the groove there. Chop that out, small, shallow V, a place that we can put a rip saw. Let me grab my rip saw. Excuse me, my crosscut saw. This is a very shallow cut. There's just a little bit of material there. Just enough to get that off. We'll do this from the other side as well. The reason I'm making this little V here is I make a notch that allows the saw to rest down below the surface of the wood, so I get a nice sharp shoulder right here. And that's what defines a first class cut. A shoulder that you're going to see for the rest of your life, you want that to be as sharp as possible. So I'm going to clean out these corners with 2 straight cuts there. I'm happy with that. And now I just need to chop out the waist there. I've got a chisel that will just match the gap here. So we'll go ahead and chop that out. So I like to go down about halfway, starting at the face side, and creep up to the baseline until I'm about a 1/16 of an inch away. Like that, and do that on all the tails, but for right now I just have one pair, so I just have this one shoulder to cut. And then when I'm ready to make a final cut here, I tilt the chisel towards me ever so slightly and go down halfway. This undercuts the joint right in the middle and gives me a sharp shoulder right on the baseline. So we got that half. We'll do the same thing over here. When I chop on this side, I don't have material underneath half of the wood here, so I can get some tear out in the middle. It's not really a big issue. But again, just creep up the line, and I'm close to the line here. Put the chisel right there, drop it right in the slot, tilt the chisel towards me, go down about halfway, and put this in the vise. clear that out. So I'm happy with this right here. Now what we're going to do, you see this little piece here is weak and it's broken off, but in this particular joint we don't really care about that because we're going to reset our marking gauge to the depth of this groove right here. So I'll do that. I'll set it from the outside here. So I'm registering the marking gauge off the outside of the work, face side, and I'm making a new scribe line that's just inside the baseline. So you can see I'm just a little bit lower than the baseline. That way I know that I've covered up that groove right there. So I've got that, and if you can run it down here just a little bit just to help you. And we'll just leave that like that. So we're going to lay out the pins off this tailboard. It would be nice if that little piece had been preserved, but it was very thin and it's not a big particular issue. So we'll lay the pin board in here, get it down about level to the thickness of the stock. Like so. Lay the pin board on here. And I don't know if you can see this or not. But the idea is to lay this on here and get it flush on one edge. So we'll just take a piece of scrap wood and make sure that it's in fact flush right there. And also that the gap between this shoulder here and the inside edge of this are right in line with each other. And so I'm happy with that, and I'm going to lay my knife right on here and cut these. Cut these two. Okay. So sometimes this is very light. And so I'll come back and lay my knife right in the groove here and just push it along and give myself a little extra marking there so I can definitely see what's going on. You can drag the knife back and forth, and when it drops in the groove, you know that you're right on the money. I got that, and then this one right there, comes out right there at the top. So we'll mark that. Now that we set these, remember that we have set this gauge to take off to leave a certain amount of material right here. You can see that. So what we're going to leave here, we're going to take off here. So we're setting a new baseline just for this one tail right here. I'm measuring this across the end of the board like so. So when I get ready to saw these, I'll just make sure I only saw down to that shoulder for this particular tail. Let me go ahead and mark these tails straight down so we can see what's going on. So I've got this line here across the top. Happy with that. And I'll bring that down here. I don't use a knife for this part right here because the only line I'm really going to follow is the line on top. This line that I'm drawing down here, that's just a guideline to help me saw straight. I'm either going to saw straight on it or I'm going to saw parallel to it, but I'm not necessarily going to try and follow that line as much as I'm going to try and be right on this line here. I'm going to take off half of each one of these lines here. I'm going to take off the waist half, which is everything in here and everything in there. So Now I'm going to break this Eris and saw straight down. Draw this line in so I can see it. Right there. I'll do this one. Now I'm only sawing down to this new baseline, which is right there. So that's how far we're going. And same thing here. Now I'm inside this waist here, so I'll make sure I cut inside there. Just down to that new shoulder. Stop there. This one, of course, goes all the way down to the bottom. Stop there. And we'll saw these out with the coping saw. And I'll turn that around so I can see that very easy, what I'm doing right here. So now we're going to chop out this waist. Got a wider chisel for that. And again, we're going to chop out close to the baseline. I'm going to have to come in at an angle because these shoulders are angled here. So I'm going to set my chisel square on the work, but as I go down, I'm going to follow the angle of the dovetail. And I'll do that and I'll creep up to this line until I'm close enough to be ready to do the last chop. So this one's pretty close. I've got this groove down here, so I don't want to chop very far. Otherwise, what will happen is I'll pop out the bottom of the groove. So I'm just going to chop just a little bit, and I'm going to come back from the other side to finish that out. Now I'm going to do the finish cut here, right on the line. Halfway. Remember, I'm tilting the chisel towards me just a little bit so I make sure the joint is undercut. Over here, same thing. Halfway. And this, I'm not going to quite go halfway. Just going to go a little bit. Come around and take away the waist. Drop it in here and chop straight down. Again here is waist. Get rid of most of that, put it right on the line. Tilt the chisel towards me. Go about halfway. And now I'm ready to clean this up. So I'll come through here. There's a little triangle of material right here that comes from chopping straight down this way, but an angle that way. So I just have to undercut that a little bit and peel it off. And if everything's clear there, I'm in business. So undercut with the corner of the chisel, straight across. A little bit right there. And we're just about ready to rock and roll here. One last thing to do. We need to remove this part of the material off of this tail right here until it's down to that line here, which is going to match that shoulder right there. So We'll do that by chopping a light line on the baseline. Put this between right here and make a little V cut right there. And we'll just work down here. And knock some of that out. Now that I've got that cut there, I can hold this with my palm of my hand. So straight down there. Straight down here. Knock that off. Last cut should be right in the groove there, straight down. Make sure your chisel drops right in there. We'll put it back flat, knock out that waste. And we'll make sure it's all that's nice and straight here. You can actually undercut this part right here just a little bit, since it's going to all be hidden. You want to make sure it doesn't interfere with the joint going together. So, what we've left here, we've taken away there. So we have sort of the yin and the yang. Let's see if this will go together. And there you go. Half lap dovetail. All the strength of a through dovetail, but it still blocks the appearance of the groove there.